Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I am joined by a very special guest for a number of reasons. First of which is he's someone that I've known for a very long time in the indie RPG space that we all sort of seem to be in. But the other thing that's really cool is he's a fellow South African like myself. And, we were actually just chatting. Yeah, there we are. Viva! So we were chatting a little bit before we started recording. And what we were actually realized is even though we've been sort of collaborating on projects throughout the years, this is probably the first time I think that we've actually spoken, voice to voice. So it's quite an interesting, just an interesting situation. But the person that I'm talking about is the inimitable Rodney Sloan of Rising Phoenix Games. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with his stuff, especially if you are sort of exist in the D&D DMs Guild kind of space. But let's just start off with me saying thank you, Rodney, for joining us this evening. And if you'd like to give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and Rising Phoenix, that would be great.
Cool. Well, thanks to Gareth for having me. I think, like I was saying, it's kind of weird with the internet that we can spend so much time chatting about so many different things and never actually talk. So this is cool. So Rising Phoenix Games started at about 10 years ago. I was working in a web design company, but I had a multimedia background and I was really wanting to get into something that I could take the game design further, because I'd also done programming as part of the multimedia thing in lifestyle course. And he talked about how you can start your own RPG business. But I was very skeptical about that because I'm like, if that's the case, then why aren't more people doing it? And so I started just trying things out, made adventures for conventions and started to sell some stuff. Then went to Japan for 5 years. And so Rising Phoenix Games had started, then we went to Japan for 5 years, my wife and I. And when we came back, we felt that we were in a position where I could do Rising Phoenix most of the time and do some freelance work on the side and so on. And so that's basically what we've been doing. We've been doing, we've been doing RPG games and RPG supplements, a lot of D&D 5th edition stuff, Pathfinder, and now Pathfinder 2nd edition as well. And then also standalone games or indie games. So it's been fun to play in all those different courts.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you've really got sort of quite a diverse product range under Rising Phoenix. So it's interesting to hear a little bit about the sort of the business origins, but what about your gaming origins? When did you start playing? What is your sort of gaming, backstory?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think I was definitely in high school. I'm not sure what year exactly, but I was big into comic books, especially Spider-Man. I still collect Spider-Man comics, but went to my first games convention or comic. It was Icon, the one that's here up in Joburg, comics and game convention. And I saw this thing, Warhammer 40K. I was like, oh, that looks really interesting. So I think I bought a box of that. And then through that, started to find out about role-playing. And I found out about this thing called Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which was back in that day, that was Hogshead Publishing. And that was 1st edition. And that was how I got into role-playing. And then my brother and a bunch of his friends were playing the White Wolf games. So we played Werewolf and Vampire. And that was basically how we started. So it was only much later that someone told me about D&D, and I was like, okay, that sounds like an interesting RPG, but I've got my other RPGs that I'm into. And then, sort of went, that sort of continued. I think with a little bit of a break during university to try and pass everything, and then got back into it again with Pathfinder, and then 4th edition D&D. We played that quite a bit. 5th edition now, and now we're playing. Last week we played Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition. We're playing that again tomorrow. So feels like full circle for me.
Excellent. Wow, gosh, yeah, that is a total Ouroboros of a story. That's great, yeah. So you definitely, when it comes to gaming yourself, that's something that you still do, and you're still playing a lot of the sort of your classic fantasy stuff, which is interesting because your games, like, yeah, we were saying you do a lot of adventures and supplements and that kind of stuff for D&D, but a lot of your own sort of game designs are quite different to the sort of traditional fantasy swords and sorcery kind of thing. And that kind of brings us now a little bit onto the topic of tonight, which is this game that you've sort of just come out with, Nightscape Red Terrors. So let's start off with the elevator pitch. So tell me, what is this game in like 60 seconds or less?
Okay, so it is 1991. The Soviet Union, has just collapsed, and during the Soviet Union, a bunch of research projects were done in the Soviet Union, and this is completely legitimate. This is not something I invented for the game, but where they started researching supernatural and occult things. And basically, this is what has now been revealed after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And you are part of a group called Integrand General, and you're going into Russia to find or to investigate one of the storage facilities for a bunch of relics and this occult research. And things just go downhill from there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be one of those. And then we went there and everything was fine, and we went home and it was great. And no. Fantastic. Okay, so it's definitely like a culty X-Files-y kind of got that sort of slightly sort of supernatural vibe, which is really, really cool. So one of the things that was interesting is when I looked at the book, and we'll talk a lot about the game and the mechanics and that sort of thing, but what I found interesting is that it's part of an established IP. So tell me a little bit about how that all came together and how you ended up working within this sort of intellectual property of Nightscapes, which I think it's like a series of books, and there's a movie and a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it's quite a big thing. There was I'm not sure exactly the order that everything came out, but anyway, I met David W. Edwards online, and he was looking for someone to. He's also quite a big gamer and part of the community. He's run conventions in his hometown and so on. But he was looking for someone to basically produce a D20 based, not necessarily like Dungeons and Dragons, but with D20 dice, a D20 based short little everything in one book RPG. And I said, yes, that's something we could definitely do, and that would be great. So I spent some time basically going through the things that he'd sent me. He sent me a bunch of the books that were out at the time. I watched the movie and so on. And it grew out of that. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So I mean,
I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does totally. So how does how does this tie into? Does it sort of like run parallel? Is it like telling the same story as maybe one of the books or the movies, or is it just something that exists in the same world? And how did that sort of conversation happen between you and David? Like, was it quite collaborative? Tell me a little bit about that whole process.
Okay, so there's quite a bit of time travel going on. Or time hopping at least. So some of the books, for example, are set during World War I, and you meet some of the main characters. Not that mentioned in the book, but actually, sorry, they are mentioned in the book. But can't remember now his name, Spencer something. One of the heroes in one of the other novels, he's one of the founders of Intergrand General. And Intergrand General is basically like, if you think Hellboy and BPRD, that's sort of also, yeah, like they are investigators of the paranormal. So the adventure follows them, follows Intergrand General, as well as, a number of the books also follow Intergrand General and some of the heroes from that story. And then sometimes it's like the movie, for example, is more set in the mythos than it is, say, following the adventures of anyone from Intergrand General specifically.
Cool, yeah. Because I mean, I looked at the trailer for the movie. I obviously haven't read any of the books myself, but the movie trailer looked very Cthulhu, sort of
Yes.
cosmic horror. You know, there was lots of like blue shimmery portal things and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
quite a sort of an interesting vibe, mixing that with your sort of like, I don't know if X-Files is the right. I keep wanting to say X-Files. I don't know, but it's got. Yeah, it's got that sort of like secret, like government experiment vibe going on, which is really, really quite cool. So you.
And it
Yeah, carry on.
Sorry, it is definitely cosmic horror. It all focuses around this cosmic pantheon, and so in Nightscape Red Terrors, one of the powers that you are basically trying to defeat is connected to the pantheon. I'm not going to go too much into it so that people can discover that for themselves, but yeah, it's definitely cosmic horror, and I think that was quite fun to play in. So
excellent. Yeah, so because I mean that's not something that you've really done a lot of, I think, in your designs up to this point. So yeah, interesting sort of departure from your usual style. But yeah, I just want to say that yeah, carry on. Sorry.
Right. I think coming from Warhammer, there is that sort of stuff there, you know, of like the greater demons and so on are very they are cosmic horror and it's different from maybe from Lovecraft's cosmic horror, but there are definitely elements that are.
You got that like the Slanesh and all of that. That's very cosmic horror. Yeah. It definitely got that vibe. So yeah, I mean, I find this quite a fascinating product, and I do want to talk a little bit about the idea of it being like a self-contained book. But I think before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the system itself. And I know you mentioned it's D20 based. So tell me a little bit about like the mechanics and how the whole thing sort of works.
Okay, so you basically have skills. So I'll just talk about. I'll compare it to D&D 5th edition, because I think that's probably a game most people are familiar with. But you know, in D&D you've got attributes and then you've got skills. So in Nightscape Red Terrors you only have skills, and those skills cover everything that you're most likely going to do in the game. You could, as it is a you know, there is basically a single adventure in the game, and you can replay that a number of ways. But as a role player, I want you to be able to take those rules and run with them if you decide. So I tried to create skills that would let you do the most number of things, but still have a good focus on what we were creating. So it's a bit of a balance. But then how it works is that you basically have your skill, and you can have 1, 2, or 3 points in a skill, and then you can have a specialization. So specialization is like saying, okay, for example, you and I can both create web pages or something like that. But you are specialized at creating web pages. You can do all the Flash and the PHP coding and all of those cool things. So you have the specialization, and then that doubles your skill. So if it's a hand-to-hand combat, both two characters might have points in it. The person with specialization is basically, if they have 2 points, it becomes 4 points. If they have 3 points, it becomes 6 points because of that. So, and then when you roll your dice, you're basically adding and subtracting penalties and bonuses, and then adding that skill bonus. And then you have a target score to hit, much like in D&D as well.
So it's like quite a streamlined system. I think one of the things I picked up from reading it is it's definitely sort of got that pick up and play vibe. Not a hell of a lot of like front loading required. People can pick up the book and kind of just as it's happening, you can kind of figure it out. Yeah, which is really, really cool. So,
Yes.
I mean, you know, it's an interesting way to present the product. Is like, this is a book that is a standalone role-playing adventure. Is this like is there going to be more in the universe? Is this like a precursor to like a big core rule book, or is this just a one and done, wham bam, thank you ma'am?
This is a complete thing. There is talk about other books, and not necessarily role-playing books, but there is the potential for another role-playing book. We have talked about it a bit. I won't go too much into any of that, but as it stands, it's a complete book. I would love it to get popular enough that as a game developer and someone who's trying to make money off this stuff, you'll run with the sales sometimes. if people enjoy it, then but at the same time, we don't, by picking this up, you don't have to wait for something else to come out, because you have everything. Yeah, and hopefully the community will grow up around it and also provide content. Even if it's unofficial content, it's nice to see that people playing with the toys.
Totally agree. Yeah. And I think the system is also sort of versatile enough that you could sort of fit it into a variety of different settings. It's not sort of too constricted to this particular world and this particular universe. One of the things that I loved about the book, and I just want to talk about it, is the way that you've done the adventure. Without spoiling anything, there's like a set of map tiles that you can kind of cut out and use it to sort of like, just tell us a little bit about that, because I thought that was like such a cool board gamey element to the thing, which I hadn't actually seen done before. So let's talk about it, because I think it's worth highlighting.
I have to give kudos, props to some of the inspirations in that. But one of the games I quite enjoy is the Dungeons and Dragons adventure board game, and that you have tiles and you put those out. What I like about it is it's a very intuitive system, and you can play solo. You don't need a GM or anything, but you still have that dungeon crawl going on. So it's quite nice, to have the tiles, that physical thing in front of you, and you can say, oh, you here. But then we've also abstracted it a bit and said, like, okay, this is the room you're in. We're not telling you exactly what it looks like. You're the GM. You can say, okay, this warehouse is, goes on for a mile long or something. It's the map is not set. We haven't drawn out each room. We've just said, okay, this is the space. This is the area. So the D&D adventure board game was one inspiration, and then another was a really great little indie pocket game called Zombies in My Pocket. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But,
yes, a print and play game.
On,
yeah.
Board Game Geek, and definitely check it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that had a similar idea with the tile. Also a game I've played just a ton of. So it was nice to take that into a role-playing setting and say, okay, you know, here's your map. And as the GM, I think you can let the players see it, or you can keep it behind your GM screen. We didn't specify how you have to use the map too much.
Yeah, it adds a nice modularity and like variation to the thing, so that people can replay it even if they know maybe the sort of broader idea of the adventure. The sort of nuts and bolts and where the things all fit together will be different every time you play, which is quite cool. Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything else you want to chat about in particular as it relates to Nightscape. If not, then maybe you can just give us a little heads up as to what else you're working on.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all we'll put details. I think about a discount code for anyone who's interested in picking up the game.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, so yeah, that'll be down there underneath the video, guys. So yeah, Rodney's very generously gonna do a little bit of a special deal for you guys. So the details will be down there. But anyway, I'm rudely interrupting. Sorry, carry on.
It's all good. As far as what we are working on, we've been working on a series, the Undersea Sourcebook series for D&D 5th edition, which is on the DMs Guild, and that is 6 books. We have put 2 out at the moment. We have the 3rd one is just waiting for me to get back to the layout. The other books are in various stages of completion, but that's going to be it's going to turn out to be quite a big collection of things for if you are running pirate campaign, undersea campaign, Adventures of Lost Atlantis, 2000 Leagues Under the Sea. We've tried to give you all the toys so that you can play in all of those things, and that's just based on our campaign that we're running, or we were running before lockdown. It just axed everything for us, but anyway, that's the main thing. And then we have some other interesting Pathfinder 2nd edition things coming out. Heaven and Hell, Asimar and Tiefling Ancestries. I got to get the name right. That has been out for a while, and that's been quite popular, and we've had a lot of good feedback on that. And we are following that up with another book. I'm not going to give the title away just yet, but hopefully that will be out sometime next month. So.
Excellent. Well, Rodney, thank you so much for joining me, and it's been great to chat. And I definitely would love to chat when some of those other products come out as well. You must just drop me a line, and happy to have you anytime. But yeah, on that note, I just want to thank Rodney for joining us and telling us all about Nightscape. And like we told you, there's information in the description of this video. If you're one of the early birds, you can get it for a special discounted rate. And thanks so much for watching. And Rodney, thanks for joining me again. Take care.